Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon. This afternoon, we have Sally Murphy with us, and she was extremely popular in her last webinar. And today, I'm really intrigued. She's going to bring us through the hero's journey. So I hope you're all as intrigued as I am, because I'm really looking forward to it. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to ask Sally to take herself off mute, and off we go. Welcome, Sally.
Emer, thanks so much for having me back, and hello to everyone who's watching this either in real time or in the recording afterwards. I'm so delighted to be here and to have been invited back to talk a little bit more about storytelling. And I suppose today what I wanted to look at was the hero's journey, a model that was created by Joseph Campbell. I mean, the theories behind it started before Joseph Campbell, but he's certainly the one who brought it into the world as a concept. And so, yeah, I just want to spend the next little while kind of looking at it as a tool for all of us to use in our businesses and in our communications. So, yeah, my name is Sally Murphy. I'm based here in Donegal, and my business is called Well Told, and I want to help businesses tell better stories. And so the way that the webinar is going to work today, I think I'm going to run for probably about 35 minutes, maybe 40 minutes. And I'm going to leave some time at the end for Q&A. And obviously, if you're watching this back and you have any questions you want to ask me, you can find me on social media afterwards. So let's have a look at Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Okay, so who was Joseph Campbell? He was a mythologist, a professor, and an author. And in 1949, he wrote a book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. He wrote many books and published many papers. There have been films made about him. You can catch a 6-part series with him on Audible, an interview series he did with an American journalist called Bill Moyers. When you start to dig into the work of Joseph Campbell, it's vast and really interesting. Not everybody agrees with what he says, like any of these types of kind of thinkers that we follow. But for the purposes of this webinar in my own work, I find a lot of his messaging really useful and really interesting, particularly this idea of the hero's journey. So what the hero's journey proposes is that since the beginning of culture, since the dawn of time, and across all cultures without exception, myths and stories, they share the same pattern. And that pattern is called the monomyth. It's an underlying pattern that's universal. So this idea of this universal pattern, this hero's journey, it isn't, there's 12 stages to it, as we'll see in a couple of slides on. Sometimes people break that down into 17 stages. Some people use it and they only pick out some of the stages. So you can use it as a tool in a lot of different ways, you know. But really the premise of it is, and the idea of it is, and where I'm coming from a story perspective, is that human history, human experience, literature, films, all types of culture, they're packed with myths and stories about heaven and earth, about love and peace, about war, about trials and tribulations, about pain and suffering, and about pleasure and success. And if we can observe how we communicate in our business with that eye to story and the different types of stories, and start to pull out certain stories when they're appropriate or they're right for us, and weave them through our business. And when we're able to view ourselves as being business people, makers, creators on our own hero's journey, as well as our customers and clients, it gives us a richness and a diversity, a well that we can draw inspiration to communicate from and to connect from. Because the truth is, as human beings, as makers, creators, entrepreneurs, business owners, dreamers, people with a side hustle, it doesn't matter, people in organizations, the truth is that we're all on a journey, and that each and every day, and that what the hero's journey shows us is that there is a circle, a cycle, a process to that journey, and we can tap into that model as a tool. So Joseph Campbell, you can find loads of information about him online, and you can order his books online. He's got a great website. There's a film that you can download on YouTube called Finding Joe. So really easy to get information about Joseph Campbell and indeed the hero's journey. Less well known, but very important, is Maureen Murdock. Maureen Murdock is based in the West Coast, and she's a psychotherapist, an educator, and an author. And her work explores the mysteries of the psyche. She's fascinated with mythology, storytelling, and memoir writing. And drawing again upon that idea of cultural myths and fairy tales, ancient symbols and dreams of contemporary women, she illustrates the need for feminine values in Western culture. And she's a really interesting person to examine alongside the work of Joseph Campbell, because she's regarded as the first person to chart an alternative to his hero's journey narrative that she believed is more appropriate for women's life journeys. She was actually a student of Joseph Campbell. She met him and worked with him. And she is a fan of the hero's journey, but she wanted to offer something that was more nuanced and more reflective of the female experience. And I think that that's really relevant to all the women and the people who identify as women, in terms of the experience of being a maker in the world, a business person in the world, someone who's in charge of families, so just someone who's out there as a woman in the world, and the difference that there is between that experience and the male experience. Because what she believed, what Maureen Murdock believed, was that the hero's journey model just didn't adequately represent the psycho-spiritual journey of the woman. And she in her practice worked with an awful lot of women and drew upon an awful lot of that information for her book, which is called The Heroine's Journey: Woman's Quest for Wholeness. And you can find information about her online, but just to show you, they did a revised edition of her book. So this is The Heroine's Journey book, and you can find that online. And she also has a great workbook called The Heroine's Journey Workbook. And that's really interesting and really important to reference. Just give me a second here. I'm going to check. There's something in the chat and I want to make sure everything's okay. All right, it seems to be okay. Yes, I'm going to put the chat box down in the corner, okay? So let me just know if everyone can hear me okay at this point. Please put a yes into the chat box if you can. So that I can see that you can hear me and you can, oh, Dan, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I should have checked that at the very, very beginning, of course, but I'm glad you got me okay. So that's Maureen Murdock, and I wanted to reference her at the very beginning. And then the next person I want to talk about is Brene Brown. And of course, I can't imagine there's a person on this call who doesn't know who Brene Brown is. And I'm a massive fan of her, as everybody is. And if you haven't come across her, you'll find her TED Talks online. She's incredible. She's an author, a researcher, and a storyteller. And in her book, Rising Strong, she references very specifically the work of Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. And we'll get to the 3-act structure that he uses a little bit further on in the slides. But what Brene does is she talks about the idea of the reckoning, the rumble, and the revolution. And this is where I want to bring you into your own experiences as artists, as makers, as human beings, as business people, as entrepreneurs, no matter where it is in your world, as people in family, as people in relationship, no matter what it is, right? This idea of the reckoning, the rumble, and the revolution, she articulates it beautifully in this book. So the reckoning is when we recognize our emotions. Something is coming up for us over and over and over again. It might be the urge to create something. It might be a sensation of wanting to hide or finding it difficult to communicate or to market or to pivot or to scale or to change direction or to begin or to stop. Can be any of those things. So the reckoning, we recognize our emotions, and instead of ignoring them, running away from them, ignoring that twisting gut feeling, that whispering, that voice in the long grass saying you're lost, come back. You get curious about the voice, you get curious about the source, and you start to listen to it. That's the reckoning. The rumble is when you work out what you need to learn, what you need to do. You realize you've come to terms with your truth. There needs to be a change. Something is whispering to you about your life. Something's not in alignment. The rumble is when you decide whether or not you're going to make the change, whether or not you're going to step forward, whether you're going to go in this direction in your business, make a change in a relationship, anything that is fearful. That not necessarily fear, it can also be exciting, but there's a change that has to take place in the rumble. And then the revolution. And the revolution is when you've come through that cycle, you've come through your hero's journey, and you start to live in truth. And the revolution is when we are able to live absolutely in alignment, absolutely in truth, vulnerable, wholehearted, honest, and open. So I wanted to cite Brene Brown and Maureen Murdock alongside Joseph Campbell, because the three of them are so interlinked for me. And also it's really important that we bring a female voice in alongside Joseph Campbell's voice, and also a more contemporary voice. Okay, so, and why for me? Why Joseph Campbell for me? Why am I interested in Joseph Campbell? Why am I talking to you? What do I hope that you guys will take from this today? Well, Joseph Campbell's famous quote, and he has many of them, he's completely Instagrammable. You'll see him all over the place. He says that if you follow your bliss, you put yourself on a kind of a track that has been there all the while waiting for you. And I suppose for me, as a business owner, I had to really learn that leaving my job to set up my business was following my bliss, because really what I want to do, I really want to be in business. I really want to run this business. I really want to be self-employed. I want to work with people. I want to help them find their best stories and communicate well and get unburdened by all of the things that burden them and stop them from communicating. But a lot of the time on this journey of being a business owner or working in an organization or following your path, it doesn't feel blissful. It feels frightening, and it feels scary, and it can feel confusing. And I come back to Joseph Campbell's work all the time, because the hero's journey model shows me and reminds me that I'm doing the right thing when I'm tuning in to what brings me joy, what feels right when I'm following my bliss, right? But is it easy to do this? Is it easy sometimes to be an artist, a creator, or a maker? You know, to spend your life following the thing inside you that you feel you must do, the work that you must make? No, sometimes it's really difficult. Of course it's not. Of course it's hard. That's why it's called a hero's journey, because part of the hero's journey, and we'll see this when we look at the structure of it, it's about encountering obstacles, battling dragons, slaying dragons, facing fears, and sometimes it's too hard and we go back. So this idea of following your bliss, it's really important. In fact, as I get older, I can see it's the only way to live our lives. But that's not to say that it's easy. But the truth is, and this is why Joseph Campbell's work is so important for me, when we're truthful, when we are in alignment with what it is that we want to do and what we're here to do, when we go on our hero's journeys, at the other side of that is transformation. And transformation and growth are essential for success at an individual level, at a creative level, at a business level, at a social level. We have to continually transform and change and grow and evolve. And so I know that in modern day existence, you know, all of the people who are watching this either in real time or afterwards, we're not out slaying physical dragons, but we have dragons that live in our minds. We have dragons that live in our organizations. There are things that we need to face on a daily basis that are hard, that threaten to keep us small or afraid. the dragons that I face and that I know many other creatives, artists, makers, people in business, leaders in organizations, people in teams, the dragons that they face are imposter syndrome, overwhelm, procrastination, fear, insecurity. Those are the dragons that we have to face. Digital overwhelm, complete information overload. There are lots of dragons, metaphorical dragons, that we need to face in our lives, in our careers, personally and professionally. And for me, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey offers me a tool to kind of plot where I am at any given time. And it gives me reassurance that I know if I keep on the path, there'll be a point of transformation, a point of change, a point where I'm no longer facing the dragon. And the other quote that Joseph Campbell has, and another quote that I love, he said that in the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. And I love that, because so often the very thing that we're afraid of doing, the very thing that it feels impossible to us, if we can do that thing, it's the thing that will offer us great freedom after that. And that might be doing Instagram stories once a week. That might be carving out the time in your schedule to write good product descriptions and to update those on your website. That might be, getting out there and going to networking events or craft fairs or galleries, or putting together a proposal to send to someone for your work. It's the thing that we're like, I really want to do that, but I'm too scared, or I'm not good enough, or I don't have the time, or it's too hard. And if we can push ourselves on our hero's journey to do that thing, on the other side, there's the treasure that we seek. And I love that idea. So let me know in the chat box if this is making sense, because I just want to know how so far this is landing with you. And also, has everybody heard of Joseph Campbell? I'd love to know that too. Let me know if you've heard of Joseph Campbell, and if you're aware of his work, or if this is entirely new to some of you. So Dan saying you never heard of him. Okay. And Dan, there's really easy to find, to look him up afterwards. So that's great. Very interesting. Brita says, but she hadn't heard of him either. Okay, interesting, good. That's great, because it's lovely when you find new things, isn't it? And maybe you've ordered his book already. Brilliant. Did you order The Hero with 1,000 Faces? Is that the one you've ordered? He has a ton of them, but and don't forget, I'll also, that you can find on YouTube the free movie Finding Bill, because you can buy it on a website, but it's also on YouTube, I think. So I'm glad. Oh yeah, you got that one, Dan. Okay, cool. Thank you for engaging with me. I appreciate it. Okay, so let's look at the hero's journey and actually look at the structure of it and see what it is. Okay, is that the right one? Oh yeah. No, this is another big why for me, and I need to go back to Brene Brown about it. So what Joseph Campbell's saying, if you follow your bliss, you put yourself on a kind of track that has been there all the while waiting for you, right? This is the thing that you've been put here to do, right? The track has been waiting for you. But this is really important to add to that. Brene Brown says in the book, Rising Strong, if we are brave enough often enough, we will fall. And this is the physics of vulnerability. And I put this quote in here because this idea here of follow your bliss, follow the joy, catch, jump and the net will appear. That's all very well, but it can be terrifying. But the reality of it is anybody who's brave to go out there and make the work that's demanding to be made, and to do all of the things associated with being a maker, being a creator, having to do all the bits of the job that you maybe like less, the accountancy or the marketing or the admin or whatever. That takes bravery. Being in business, being a maker, being a leader, working in a team, it takes bravery. And if we can all accept that within that, sometimes there will be failure, sometimes we will fall, and we keep on doing it anyway, then that vulnerability, I believe, will make the world a better place. Yeah, and Dan is saying success and happiness is the phoenix rising from failure. Yeah, absolutely. And there's another quote I love, Dan, and I can't remember who it's attributed to. I found it online, and it says, you've seen my descent, now watch my rising. This is the way my business experience goes. Up and down, peaks and troughs all the time. You know, I just want to talk about it more, and I want to be able to be in conversation with other people about it more, so that we can, because it's a common experience, I think. So Brene's quote is really important to me. If we're going to be brave, if we're going to follow our bliss, part of that is that we will fall. There will be times when it sucks and it doesn't work out and it's hard, but there will be times when it's successful and we're winning and we're in alignment and it feels good. It's all part and parcel of the same brave hero's journey. Okay, so let's look at the hero's journey. Okay, so one of the things about the hero's journey is that it's, once you know the structure, and I'm going to show that to you on the next slide, you can see it appear in almost every film and in so many books. And, you know, when there's a classic narrative arc to a story, and you'll see that in the other presentation I did a couple of months ago, I think it was in April. But essentially every story follows a thing called Freytag's pyramid. And there's a beginning of the story, the middle of the story where there's kind of more action, there's climax up here, and then it moves down towards a resolution, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And a hero's journey is very much like that, okay? And we see this hero's journey model appear in films like Shirley Valentine, Rocky, The Wizard of Oz, Toy Story, National Velvet, The Hunger Games, Harry Potter, you name it, and films have this structure. In fact, Joseph Campbell consulted with George Lucas on the first 3 Star Wars films, and he specifically used the hero's journey and the 12 stages of the hero's journey in Star Wars specifically. But you see this motif, this structure appear over and over and over again. And what I say is that that hero's journey model can be seen in our own lives, in our own businesses, in our own journey as artists and makers and creatives, over and over and over again. Big hero's journeys and small hero's journeys. And so here is the actual outline of it. I'm just moving some things on my screen here because I can't see it so clearly. So what happens with the hero's journey is that we start off here in the status quo. This part of the hero's journey is called the ordinary world. So it's Frodo in that, what is the place where he lived? The lovely little place with all the lovely little hobbit houses. It's Frodo hanging out with his best mate in The Lord of the Rings before he gets the call to adventure. It's the status quo is where you are right now. It's where your life is ordinary. The situation is as it is. It might be uncomfortable. It might not be what you like. You might not be living your dream. You might not be making the work that you want to make, but it's known. Everything is safe. There's a safety to it. And at some point in the hero's journey, the second stage of the hero's journey is there's a call to adventure. Like my granny used to say, there's a want in me. You know, there's something in me that's saying there's got to be more, or I want something different. It's where you want to leave home. It's where you want to begin a relationship or end a relationship. It's where you want to do something that's different. It's when I knew at one point that although I loved my job, you know, really loved it, and I worked in an amazing contemporary art gallery, there was a want in me. I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to work with words. That was my call to adventure. And so we all have a call to adventure at different times, small and big. And inevitably on the hero's journey, there's a refusal of the call. We're like, no. We push away the whispering. We stay in the long grass. You know, we're like, no, I'm not going to do this thing. It's too hard, because the status quo is comfortable. It's safe. But what happens in the hero's journey is inevitably we move over from the ordinary world, from what's known, into the special world, into what's unknown. This is the path of the hero's journey. And what happens on the hero's journey, inevitably, we meet some type of a mentor, some type of a guide. And it can be really random. It can be you know, I'm thinking about my own life, and I've had these experiences over and over again. I've met somebody, it could be at a networking event, or I've stumbled across them online, or something's happened and they've done what I have wanted to do. And I feel encouraged by their story and I want to move on. So this stage 4 of the hero's journey, is meeting a mentor or a guide. And then in these pieces here, crossing the first threshold, tests, allies, enemies, the approach of the innermost cave, the ordeal, the reward, seizing the sword, all of this stuff here is called the abyss. And what this is about, it's about in our hero's journey, we've had a call to adventure. We've listened to the whispering to say, there's something I want to do differently. There's a change I want to make. Something might happen in our life. We might realize life is short. We might want to make a change with our health. You know, it can be anything. And we have this decision. We make a decision to go for it, to make a change, to try and do something that changes the status quo. We have a mentor, we've met a guide. You know, there's people that we can go to. Yeah, the mentor can be an enabler, Dan, a door opener, someone that we can seek inspiration from. But the hero's journey by its very nature is challenging, because in that unknown world, because we're not in a place that's safe anymore, because we're not sticking with the status quo, there's obstacles, there's dragons, there's dark caves that we have to go into. We have to test ourselves. We have to face our fears. We have to do the thing that we think we cannot do. It's lonely being a hero on a hero's journey, because you have to do it on your own to a degree, you know? And so all this part of the special world is where things are tough. And we might want to go back. We might want to say, this wasn't worth it. That's too hard. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go back to the way it was. And sometimes we do go back, and sometimes we don't continue on the hero's journey. But if we stay the course, if we can continue on, even though it's hard, and we go through an ordeal, there's a reward. And they call it here seizing the sword. You'll often see in films and you know, in literature that there's this idea of getting the elixir. We slay the dragon, we get the golden egg. we get the ring back. You know, we fight the monster. You know, we are victorious in some way. You know, and then we begin the road back, the journey back to the ordinary world, where we return with the elixir, the knowledge that we have gained, the wisdom that we accrued in that whole epic journey. We're changed, we're different. We've journeyed into the dark cave and we've come out the other side. And this is a really important part of the hero's journey, because what we do then is we bring the message back. We share our journey of transformation with other people who are at the start of their hero's journey. We become the guide for other people. And you see, it brings it back to the Brene Brown stuff about vulnerability and courage and honesty and being open, and about sharing with people where we're at on our journey as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as makers, as people inside teams. And, you know, that we let people know that we've been on that journey. We know what it's like. We went to that dark cave and we've come back transformed. It gives other people faith that they can do the very same thing. So I'm going to continue to pause on this slide for a second, and I'm going to ask you some questions. And I don't expect you to answer them back in the chat box, but I encourage you to maybe get a pen and a piece of paper, whether you're watching this in real time or online. And of course, you can watch it back if you are watching it in real time. But I want us as people, because collectively we're all experiencing something here as a human race, as Irish people, as globally, this whole pandemic situation, the digital revolution, lots of different, we're all on a hero's journey in many ways together at the moment, right? And And I'd love to know how you can plug your individual stories. How many people are on this call right now in real time? How many people watch it afterwards as a recording? I'll never know how many people see this, but I hope to be able to connect with you anyway as one human being to another. And let's see if we can plug our story into the hero's journey. So consider this question. When you look at that circle right now, where are you in your circle? Are you in the status quo stage of something? Or have you heard the call to adventure? Maybe you've just found a guide. Or possibly you're looking at that cave and you're scared to go in. Or maybe you're in the middle of a bloody battle right now and it's an ordeal. Or maybe you've come through it and you're returning with the elixir. You've experienced transformation, you're changed, you've come through something. And here's the thing that's important to note. We are on heroes' journeys, several of them all the time. So I'm on a hero's journey at the minute, personally, because my eldest son is moving to university for the first time and he's leaving the country, and I know that by the time we come around to September, October, and he's gone, there'll be a transformation there in our family and it will be better than it is now. I've been on hero's journeys with work, with health, with lots of different things. So I ask you that question now, where are you on your hero's journey? And Dan has put in the comments saying none of us are in the status quo. And I'm curious as to how you can speak for everyone, Dan. I'm genuinely curious as to how you can say that. Because you say the earth beneath our feet is changing and we must too. Yeah, for sure. Transformation and change is a part of growth and it's part of being human. But I would argue that at different points in our life and in different areas of our life and our experience as humans, we are in a status quo. And the status quo in other versions of the hero's journey, and you'll see this if you look at online, status quo might be called something slightly different. So oftentimes people will have changed the names of these stages of the hero's journey. Status quo is where we are right now. It's the place in the ordinary world. It's where you exist before the story begins. The status quo is where you don't know the adventures and the challenges that are about to take place, but something's about to happen. So the status quo is the kind of present moment. You could call it that as well. So yeah, where are you at in your circle right now? And if there was a call to adventure, or if there's currently a call to adventure, what is it? Is there something whispering in the long grass that you want to do, that you want to change, that you want to make a place where you want to stretch and grow to? You don't have to do anything about it right now, but if it's there, if something's popped into your mind as I'm speaking, write it down, acknowledge it. Do that thing that Brene Brown talked about where we point to it and we own it, What is your dragon? What's the thing that you're afraid of? What's the thing that feels insurmountable? What's that dark cave that you're afraid to answer? Again, only for you. Write it down. What's the thing that you think is holding you back completely, that makes it impossible to move forward? Or the big block, the big black, dark block up on the road ahead. What is it? But if you were able to slay that dragon, burrow through that metaphorical black rock in front of you, what's on the other side? What does transformation look like for you? What would it be if, what would it be like? What would life be like if you slayed that dragon? Think about that. Take a moment, consider it. No matter what it's like, whether it's to do with your work, whether it's to do with your personal life, whether it's to do with any element of your experience on earth at the moment, that thing that's holding you back, that you're afraid of, that's pulling you down, that's costing you your peace of mind, what would it be like if you slayed that, if you got rid of it? And what would it feel like? Who would you be? What would life be like? And the final question I'll ask you to consider is, what's at stake if you don't slay it, if you don't burrow through that mountain? And this is your hero's journey. Nobody else can tell you what to do. Nobody can tell me what to do. I might spend an awful lot of time outside that innermost cave. That's up to me. How long I take on my hero's journey is up to me. And the same with all of you, right? But it's about knowing ourselves and becoming aware of it so that we can make conscious choices. Because the final question I'll ask you is, what's at stake if you don't slay the dragon? What's at stake? What happens if you don't make this change? Write it down, be aware of it. And this goes back to, just to simplify the circle a little bit. In essence, there are 3 acts to the circle. There's the departure. Our hero is living in an ordinary world, and she receives some sort of call to adventure. She's usually uncertain. She usually refuses it. She kind of pauses for a while. She hesitates, but then some kind of mentor arrives, a guide. The second act is the initiation. That's the special world where there's a series of tasks until we reach the climax of our story, the main obstacle or enemy. And that's where we get to put into practice all the skills and the strengths that we have accrued on this journey and on all our other journeys, where we realize that we have more resources, more resilience, more strength than we knew, more ideas, more creativity, more conceptualizing, more iterating, more tools in our toolbox. And then the return, where we return to the ordinary world, we experience a metamorphosis, we acknowledge that we've been changed, and we go back into the ordinary world. And it's really important that we then share that. We share it to make other people's experience better, where appropriate. We share it so that other people know that if they're struggling, it's normal to struggle on a hero's journey. It's normal to struggle when we're trying to build businesses, trying to make work, trying to sell work, trying to communicate. It's not easy, Some of it's easier for some people than others, That's the way of this. That's the way of living in a brave-hearted way where we're trying to follow our bliss, And so the 3 acts is a way of just breaking down those 12 pieces. And again, if you look at this online, you'll see the 12 pieces broken neatly into the 3 acts. And so as we move towards the end of the presentation, it's this idea that Joseph Campbell said that I just think is so important. And it's the idea of the work that we do, the life that we live, and the hero's journey. He said, you enter the forest at the darkest point where there is no path. Because when there's a way or a path, it's somebody else's. You're not on your path. But if you follow someone else's way, you are not going to realize your potential. And like I say to the people that I work with often, particularly about communications and online stuff, right? And it happens to me too. I go onto Instagram, or I go onto Facebook, or I go onto LinkedIn, or go onto any of them, and I can find 100 people who do what I do better than me, who have more energy, who are more vocal, just better in every way, And I go into that awful place where I'm like, I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. And that has happened to almost every person I've spoken to who works in this world of being a maker, being a creator, being in business. But the truth is, we are forging our own path through a dark forest. And the only thing that we can do is continue to do what feels right for us and what feels in alignment for us, and believe in that truth of what it is that we're trying to make and create, and get help when we need it, and find the right inspiration and all of the other bits around it. But it's just to know that we are entering the forest, we're forging our own path, and that takes guts, and at times it's really scary, but it's so worth it. And that's what Brene Brown said. It's this idea of this universally shared experience. That's what I really wanted to bring to you all today with the hero's journey. And she said that all of us must make our own way, exploring some of the most universally shared experiences, while also navigating a solitude that makes us feel as if we are the first to set foot in uncharted regions. And so what's that all about? Like, what's that got to do with business, with crafts, with making? Well, it's about you sharing that story. And so if you can share different pieces of your hero's journey, people who were guides and mentors along the way, people who, the moments where you found it really difficult, and how you overcame that, how you overcame the obstacles, what transformation looks like. Share your successes, share the wins, share it all. Share your hero's journey, because the adventures of your life follow the same pattern. And stories come from humans, and human beings of all ages, of all races, of all backgrounds, of all cultures, they experience the same range of human emotions: fear, loss, love, joy, excitement, disappointment, boredom, depression, confusion, overwhelm, passion, inspiration, awe. Human beings all experience that stuff. Self-consciousness, embarrassment. Share those stories as they relate to your work and as they relate to your audiences, because this is the nature of human existence, and we are all interconnected, and it's our stories that connect us. And so the reality of it is that you are, I am, we are all the heroes of our own journeys. But what makes us a hero is not just in the private triumph of adversity, but our ability to share that with other people so that they too can feel connected, can feel not alone, can feel inspired, and can feel connected to you. And the important thing to recognize with this idea of the sharing is that, take this away from us for a second and think about it from the perspective of our customers, of our clients, of the people out there who want to see our work, or who need our support, or who want to buy our services, who want to have our art in their homes, experience our creativity. They are all on their own hero's journeys too. So if you can consider all of this from your customers or your clients' perspective, as well as your own, that's a whole nother workshop. And in fact, if you look at Donald Miller's book, Building Story Brand, and you can find, he's got a podcast, he's got loads of free resources. And this book here is essentially a breakdown of the hero's journey, but it's from the customer's perspective. So that's a whole nother thing that we can look at. So you're on a hero's journey, and so is your customer, so is your client. And so that's the end of the presentation. 42 minutes, not too long. That's my website, welltold.ie. My URL is welltoldsally. And I'm going to hang on for a couple of minutes, Emer, if it makes sense to ask.
Yes, Sally, that was absolutely amazing. I sort of feel as if you're kind of running in tandem with the Olympics. You know, that was 42 minutes. Well, what I would say was it was intriguing. And something that I find is really interesting when you said, you know, that you can look up akin people who do similar things to you, right? And that you would look at 100 people and they could be 100 people that are better than you, right? Mm-hmm. You don't actually know that they're better than you. That is your perception.
Yeah.
And say with me and you, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't know you, but I'm a customer of yours on behalf of my organization and what I thought would be useful to our clients.
Yeah.
And my perception of you is not necessarily that there are 100 people out there better than you are. And I think that ties in nicely. It's you're on the customer's journey and tying in with your customer's journey as well, and the customer's need. And the same would be true of all our clients. I mean, if I'm looking at, say, there are 20 ceramicists making vessels.
Yeah.
You know, though each of those makers in their own right is in parallel, or you probably describe it better than I would, with the journey of their customer.
Completely.
And some customers are going to buy one person's ceramics and another customer is going to buy another person's ceramics. So, I mean, I really think this has been uplifting.
Good. And
of huge interest and intrigue. And we're getting, see that this comment there, just that comment there from Dan, the longer one, Sally.
Yes, Dan. So he says he's a classic pragmatist, engineer, designer, maker, and for many years a mentor. The situation of most of your viewers is very different and much more challenging than it was 2 years ago. Absolutely. Like 100%. We're still in this. And I heard this great quote recently. Somebody talked about it, you know, about us all being in the middle of this really turbulent sea at the moment. But somebody said, again, it was like a meme online, we may all be on a turbulent sea, but we're all in different boats. Some people are in a yacht and other people are in a dinghy, and some people are hanging on to one shred of a piece of wood from their broken down canoe, you know. So absolutely, you're right, you know. Dan says he's lucky in that nothing holds me back. I've slayed many personal dragons in my 70 years. My greatest joy is found in helping those starting out to find their own path. Dan, I'd love to meet you in real life. That's what I'd love to do. Yeah, you're 100% right. And that's why I think that, because there's so many different ways we could talk about the hero's journey, and you know, people can pull it apart as well. If you look online, there's critics pulling it apart, and rightly so. We should always question all sorts of philosophies and ideas, but the truth of it is that that transformation piece is really important. Like, if we can help other people with our stories, if we can help other people connect to us and find something that brings them joy, that solves a problem for them in the way that maybe they wanted to buy the perfect ceramic gift for someone that they love. Maybe us telling our story is going to be a piece of the bridge that is built between that customer becoming aware of us, becoming in tune with us, getting to know, like, and trust us, and therefore buying our piece of ceramic art at the end of that journey of shared experience. Does that make sense? Yeah.
It really does. It's great to see. Do you see Dan's phrase there? Be brave, believe in yourself.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, I love that, Dan. It's a gorgeous thing to say. And thanks, Dan. I love your support.
It's great. It's great. But Sally, I think that's given everybody great food for thought, and it's incredibly uplifting.
Yeah,
really, really uplifting, and I'm delighted that you were able to come back to us.
I'm delighted too.
Yeah, because I know it's a very busy time for you at the moment, so I really appreciate you giving of your time to all of our audience today. Thanks everyone very much, and thank you for joining me. And for those who will join you in the future, Sally, all I can say is it was excellent, and thank you so much. Okay, everyone. So we'll leave it at that for today, and take care until the next time. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.